this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I painted one of my favorite scenes of My Hero Academia in watercolor. The paper I'm using, I think, was an A5 size, or a little bit under, and it was cold pressed watercolor paper. I start off with mapping out the drawing with watercolor pencils. The reason I use watercolor pencils is because there's no trace of them afterwards. So once you add water, watercolor pencil tends to be extremely light, and the paint palette that I use has a bit more pigment. So because it has a bit more pigment, it masks the line work up below. I found this to be a nifty little trick. In this painting, not only is it one of my favourite scenes, and I feel like a lot of people probably feel the same way, because it's just the bee's knees of scenes, but it also was a bit of a challenge for me because of the perspective of it all. I personally don't really like doing perspective stuff, just because my mind does not want to work in that way, but it is really good to challenge yourself and try and branch out. So because I'm using the watercolor pencil, I can kind of get away with using a bit more guidelines, I guess. I wouldn't normally recommend people to go too heavy with the line work of a painting or drawing because you don't want it to show underneath, but like I mentioned before, because I'm using the watercolor pencil, it's pretty unlikely for there to be any line work visible after I've started adding the colors. And obviously the more details you can put into the sketch, the more accurate the character will look. You might have noticed that there are some pauses in this recording. That is because I do live stream this on Twitch. And the reason that I've decided to keep them in there is so that there is a bit of a freeze frame, so you can actually see the picture without my hand being over the top of it or something moving. Once I was confident enough with my drawing, I decided to add some colour. I do start off with the base tones, so skin tones are something that I really struggle with. And I need to become a bit more confident in making those skin tones a bit bolder, because most of my paintings, the skin tone doesn't really show at all. So I kind of pushed myself a bit more to get a bit more heavy, I guess, with the shadowing side of it, as well as making sure that the actual skin tone does look different to the back, the actual colour of the paper. And then moving forward, just like any watercolour piece, you just start layering. That's really the main thing that you gotta do to get some cool texture going. Another challenge that I find with watercolour is that when you do add bold line work, it can kind of get rid of a lot of the detail that you have painted down. So for this scene it works because My Hero Academia has a lot of like bold line work. If you guys have seen All Might, he has got solid black line work for like a huge portion of his face as well. So it works out. But I do see that a lot of the detail that I did put in there with the watercolor does go, and I think that's just because of the high contrast. So the solid black, it's kind of the same as if you use a solid white as well, is it just kind of makes the tones a little bit less vibrant. I find line work to always be a little bit nerve-wracking because, you know, once it's on there it's kind of hard to get rid of a solid black. But if you have the placement right, it is super rewarding. Recently, I've really been vibing with painting little iconic scenes. So anything that you can think of that kind of takes you back to a fun memory, or just like a really empowering point of some sort of show that you're watching, may that be like anime or cartoon. I've just been really keen on capturing that emotion, that particular scene. So if you guys can think of anything that you would like to see me paint, these are just little paintings, and I do them on stream. I find them a lot of fun to do, so you can always put some recommendations down below of scenes that you really liked growing up or even just recently. You could probably notice that I didn't solid line everything, and that's because I wanted to keep some of the texture of the watercolor still there. I also added some fine line work, like scratches kind of look, to really add some more immersion so the lines don't look as, what would you call it? So it all looks a little bit more cohesive. I used black acrylic to line this painting. A huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters. Keep being awesome. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. See you next time.